Welcome to the US Daily Brief channel. Russia entered Ukraine on February 24 at the behest of President Vladimir Putin. But the fingers of the Russian army, which Putin saw as an iron fist, were suddenly broken. Each unit of the Russian army poured out against the armed forces of Ukraine one by one. While it was thought that Russian tanks could crush Ukrainian weapons, thousands of tanks came under the wrath of the Ukrainian armed forces' anti-tank missiles. Russian warplanes were expected to give you great advantage with their latest technology, but over 200 Russian warplanes were targeted by the Ukrainian air defense systems and were destroyed. The most interesting thing in the conflict between Ukraine and Russia was the defeat of Russia's most trusted spetsnaz special forces. While it was expected that the spetsnaz special forces would have a great impact in the early days of the war, it failed to produce the required effect. We will present a very special report on this subject, and we will examine the situation of the Russian Special Operations Forces spetsnaz in Ukraine. We strongly recommend that you watch until the end and also watch our previous videos if you are curious about the operations of the Ukrainian Special Ops Shaman Battalion against Russia. It is known that Russian Special Forces spetsnaz and VDV operated at Gostomel airport in March. Here, in the war of the Russian spetsnaz and the VDV with the Ukrainian Shaman Battalion, the victorious side was the Shaman Battalion, and at least 60 Russian Special Units members were destroyed or captured. At the dawn of February 24, Russian VDV Special Unit paratroopers were told by their commander that they were on the way to training. However, they suddenly found themselves in the middle of unexpected war. The Russian army had captured a large part of the strategic Gostomel airport with the airborne landing of spetsnaz and VDV. However, the most notorious units of the Ukrainian Special Operations Forces, the Shaman Battalion, defended the region. In addition, together with the Shaman Battalion, Ukraine's 79th and 80th Air Assault Brigades raised Gostomel airport and managed to defeat the Russian Special Forces. In addition, it was reported that at least 2,000 of the Russian spetsnaz and VDV forces, consisted of approximately 60,000 special soldiers, were neutralized in Ukraine. This is certainly a very serious raid, and the Russian spetsnaz suffered heavy losses and retreated as Ukraine's ghost warriors blow up Russia's military infrastructure from within. The Russian spetsnaz was in a deep silence after the war that started in Ukraine, and their fate is currently unknown. However, it is also stated that they contributed to the Russian army at a certain level. Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022 involves nearly every element of Russia's family of special forces agencies. These agencies were supposed to play an important role in the opening hours and days of operations that were intended to be quick operations and did not happen in the slightest. However, the special forces elements of Russia's armed forces and security bodies, although not as centralized as originally intended, continue to play an important role in the continued occupation of Russia. It is very clear that this union will be important in the Ukraine war as well. In the early hours of the war, various spetsnaz units promptly entered Ukraine and began assisting in what was supposed to be a rapid regime change operation. According to the allegations made especially by Ukraine, the unit went after the head of Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky by wandering the streets of Kiev with civilian clothes. This operation actually continues an ingrained skill within the Russian spetsnaz units. Their political combat skills are another feature that sets them apart from their American and Western counterparts. However, despite the wide range of activities undertaken by Russian spetsnaz units in Ukraine, in the early days of the war, they were not able to quickly end the operation, and the Ukrainian government remained in power and functional. They tarnished the reputation of the famous association. It is very clear that the most fundamental thing that Russia has lost in Ukraine above all else is the reputation. While Russia was a world-renowned army with almost all of its units, it failed every aspect, and they cast a shadow over the reputation of all these units. Or the security abilities the Ukrainian armed forces were over the top. It turned out that the Russian army and its units are an ensemble that should not be so praised. In recent days, the functions of the spetsnaz troops has lost its main role, as the war in Ukraine has turned completely into a long-range duel. Although there is visual evidence that Russian spetsnaz troops are still fighting in Ukraine, it is unclear what their role in the invasion was today. The use of such a specially trained unit in a simply infantry war would only be an absurd explanation. Even if the Russian spetsnaz did not manage to put an end to Moscow's special military operation in a timely and decisive manner, their operation will not hurt or increase their fortunes, because the Russian national security and political system is built around inter-elite conflicts. The fate of the different spetsnaz troops will likely be a function of the leadership's political understanding rather than their performance in Ukraine. Established in 1950 by the Russian army to perform reconnaissance and special missions in war and peacetime, the unit successfully fulfilled its duties in many different places from Afghanistan to Africa. While the spetsnaz units played a very active role in these regions, especially because of the prevention of terrorist acts by the Russian army, they also had a very dominant role in the intelligence role. Spetsnaz conducted reconnaissance and sabotage missions against NATO in Europe during the Cold War. The Spetsnaz are not unlike the US Army Special Forces and are considered one of the best special forces in the world due to their training of the high standards. Of course, we must make a note here. After Russia formed the Spetsnaz units, it copied the US Special Forces in every field and modeled the training models in the Spetsnaz on the example of the US Special Forces. So, US Special Ops is probably more experienced than Spetsnaz in many areas. We can make a comparison between Russian Spetsnaz and US Special Ops here, but both countries are the most famous and best in the world. The most obvious difference now is that Russia entered Ukraine, ruining Spetsnaz reputation. The word meaning of Spetsnaz is formed from a group of words from Russian meaning special purpose forces. Spetsnaz controlled by the Russia's main intelligence directorate and the civilian Federal Security Service, Alpha Group and Wimpel Group within the Federal Security Service. And the FSB's leading Spetsnaz units are particularly well known. At the same time, Spetsnaz units affiliated to the main intelligence directorate are the oldest of this unit. This division, which has been serving Russia for 70 years, plays a very leading role, especially in assassinations. In addition to these former Special Forces units, the Russian General Guard is one of the newest additions to the Russian Spetsnaz ecosystem and also one of the most politicized. The Kremlin-focused advancing union is often criticized by allegedly doing the dirty work of the government, and they are also known as Putin's hand and arm for their closeness to politics. To explain all this more clearly, Spetsnaz did not lose his reputation in Russia after his failures in Ukraine, because their influence in the political arena seems to be very serious. For this reason, under the wings of its leaders, its values will remain close to discussion. But in case of disappointment for Russia at the end of the invasion, Spetsnaz move is already eagerly awaited. Because Putin played all his cards on this war and he loses, he can lose everything he has with his seat. In the face of Spetsnaz's unsuccessful picture, the SBU, which is seen as Ukraine's secret weapon, is showing its strength completely. In our previous videos, we included the Ukrainian Special Forces Shayman Battalion, the most notorious unit of the SBU. If you are wondering about Ukraine's Special Ops achievements, we definitely recommend you to watch it. The SBU is the predominant security service in Ukraine and will likely to continue to play a very active role in the providing support to Ukrainian forces fighting Russia in the war and behind. The contribution of the SBU to Ukraine, whose performance in the war has been mostly hazy, seems to be great to be denied. Although Spetsnaz is currently actively involved in the region, even though it seems that he has moved away from his job description, the SBU is still taking very serious steps in the field of intelligence on behalf of Ukraine. It is thought that the fate of Spetsnaz will be determined by the outcome of the war. There is a fact that Spetsnaz is very dangerous for Ukraine. We hope that the Ukrainian SBU counterintelligence agents will be able to prevent Spetsnaz operations in time, just like in the siege of Kiev.